Good morning, it's Greg Otten here with maritimegardening.com, and today I'm going to plant some squash in my tulip garden. Stay with me. So here we have a tulip garden, and as you can tell, the tulips are starting to give up. The reason I have a tulip garden in my vegetable garden enclosure is because if I plant them anywhere else on my property, they get eaten by deer and squirrels and rabbits and porcupines. So I've got them in the enclosure here with my fence is about 4 or 5 feet high. Anything that wants to get in can probably get in, but it just keeps things from wandering in. And that seems to do the job. If any deer figured out that this was a food zone, it could jump the fence, no problemo. Anyway, so this is, I guess, a kind of succession gardening, or companion gardening, I suppose. Now, I've done a lot of reading on that, and one guy will say, oh, you can put tomatoes with basil, and that really helps the tomatoes. And one guy will say, oh, you can put tomatoes with this or with that. And I don't know if there's any real rhyme or reason to it. I don't know why any one plant pulling nutrients out of the soil is somehow beneficial for another plant that's trying to pull nutrients out of the soil. I think two plants can get along if they don't have the same nutrient needs, like beans and squash, for instance. Beans put nitrogen in the soil, and squash are heavy feeders and take a lot of nitrogen out of the soil. This tulip garden have tulips in it, but when the tulips start to give up, it looks ugly, and it's the first thing you see when you walk in my garden, so I want to have something pretty showy. So normally I plant something else in here when the tulips start to give up. Last year I put beans here. Yellow beans, bush beans. And this year I'm going to put a kind of zucchini squash, I guess you call it. I don't know exactly what it's called now. In here. Okay, it's called squash oranzevi. They're these tiny little yellow squash. They taste really good. I got these from an online seed provider in the Ukraine. The prices were incredible. Always worth shopping around. Anyway, so they're a small bush type plant as far as I understand it. They're really good for pickling and that sort of thing. So I'm going to plant them in amongst these tulips. But of course this is real gardening, and I got a couple of things I got to do first, so I thought I'd just bring you with me while I'm doing that. So here we are at the compost bin. This is the place where I buried my potatoes, if you watch that potato root cellar hack video. Anyway, I've got some 2-year-old composted horse manure, seaweed, leaves, yard waste. I just throw everything in here and leave it for a couple of years. And so I'm going to screen some of this, and I'm going to use it in the seed planting I'm doing there. Whenever I put new seeds in the ground, if I have the time, I like to put just a little bit of perfect growing medium over that. I don't think it makes much of a difference, but it makes me feel more confident about how the outcome's going to go, and that's important. If you think a seed's supposed to germinate in a week and you don't see it after a week, you start getting really worried. You start digging up and mucking around and looking at the seed to see if it's germinated, or you replant, or you just start to doubt things. So anything you can do that increases your confidence about the successful germination, it's worth doing. And this takes an extra 2 or 3 minutes, so it's not really a big deal. So, got the wheelbarrow. I got a bit of sand here. I got some sand for sandbox for my kid a number of years ago, for my kids, and it had more than I need. I basically have a lifetime supply of sand. So whenever I'm making a sort of seed starting germination medium, I'll millipede there. I'll throw a bit of sand in just to use it up. Also, it's nice and easy for the seeds to push up through. This is, you've seen this before, this is a piece of a baby gate that I fished out of someone's trash. I put a little box around it just to, so it'll hold soil, but it seems to work perfect. It's got about a 3/4 inch, 2 centimeter wide diameter hole, and I think that's fine for just about anything. A lot of screens are quite fine. I don't think you need that. This is easier. You get bigger hunks, but they're not too big. And just throw that on there. And this is great stuff. I mean, so this here is a clump of leaf mold. So you can see the leaves, right? But it's really mostly broken up. So you take a bit of this, and you're going to get your hands dirty. But you just take that stuff and smush it around with your hands a bit, and then give it a shake. Whenever it doesn't come out, fire that back in. I'll do about 3 of these, and that'll be more than enough for what I'm doing today. Planting a number of squash today because it just seems like the right day to do it. It's, I think, around June 10th, and you might think that's late in the year depending on where you live, but where I live, if you go down 2 inches into the soil, which is where most squashes want to be planted, it's still quite cool. And the ideal germination temperature for squash is between 16 and 20 degrees Celsius, 60, 70 Fahrenheit, room temperature. And if it's cold to your hand, if it feels cold, like what would you say that? Well, not room temperature. If it feels cold, then to your hand, then it's probably not that nice 16 degrees Celsius temperature. It's probably cooler than that. So today I'll show you a couple of tricks also for how I break the rules a bit, or just ensure germination a bit more. If a squash seed is cold and wet, there's a good chance it'll rot in the ground. So now I'm just going to take this and incorporate this sand in with the compost. Unseasonably hot day for early June in this part of the world. It's supposed to get up to 30 today. That's unheard of. And it's supposed to be hot tomorrow, same thing. So it's a perfect time to get those seeds in. All right, look at that. That's beautiful stuff. That's just beautiful stuff. Full of organic matter, nice and loose. See, and the sand kind of acts like a vermiculite, right? When you incorporate it this way, it keeps, the soil just can't be compacted no matter how hard I try. If I try to squeeze that, I got a pretty good grip. If I try to squeeze that into a ball, it just will not compact. Look at that. Squeeze it, it still falls apart. Right? And that's what you want, soil that will not compact. Alright, so there we go. We got our potting medium. Put some of that in a bucket here. Now we can go plant our squash. Alright, so here we are in the space where I'm going to plant these. It says to put these about 2 inches deep and about 12 inches apart. So I got one, I've already planted a couple over here. I planted one here. I'm going to plant one around here, put one in the corner. I'll space them out, right? They'll definitely fill up this whole area. So this is a well-milled bed, and you can see I don't know how well this shows up on camera. When all the beans died last year, I just cut them. I didn't pull them out of the ground. So there's one of the stems and roots from the beans last year. Right, I left that all in the ground so that all the nitrogen that this bean fixed in the soil could stay in there. If I pulled that all out, I'd just be releasing that into the atmosphere. So, yeah, a lot easier. That's beautiful black soil, right? Nice stuff. My whole garden here was all just hard clay. And I've just been mulching it with different mediums for the last 5 years, and it's really paid off. So if I go far enough here, there's the original clay. So I got to get down about 4 inches to get to the original clay, and that's clay. Right? Clay. Right? But that clay is slowly but surely turning into nice stuff through this process. Alright, so I got my hole about the right depth. It looks like it's deeper than 2 inches, and that's because I got about 1.5 inches of mulch. I'm going to pick the 2 nicest looking seeds, put them down. There we go. Done. Alright, so I thought I'd do the rest of the garden in real time here just to show how quickly this can happen when you're organized. So I got all my holes dug. I'm going to pop my seeds in. Here's the 2. Picking out I got all the seeds in my hand here, and I'm just picking out every time the 2 best ones I can see. There's a lot of variation in seeds, and some of them are just kind of wimpy and pathetic. So you want the big fat ones. Biggest, fattest seeds you can see. That's the ones you want to put in there. Which chances are they have the best chances of germination, not just germination, success. That is to say, sort of growing and being healthy and making it to a ripe old age. Where the heck did I put the bag for those? Of course I lost the bag. But anyway, I'll do this one-handed. I'll just cover these over. About 2 handfuls. And yes, these holes aren't mulched, but they will be once the squash come up and they're about 4 inches high. I'll move the mulch back around. And the reason I'm leaving it bare, you don't have to do this everywhere, but the reason I'm leaving the soil bare while these germinate is because it just gets so cold here, and we don't have the kind of heat other parts of the world have. It's called Zone 6, but I'm a high elevation on a near coast, so it behaves in a lot of ways like much colder areas. So I need this to be dark so it'll attract heat, right? This reflects heat because it's light. This is dark, so it attracts heat. So anything you can do like that to get the soil temperature up. I got a really hot day. I want this soil to absorb as much heat as it can so it can stay warm enough overnight as the seed doesn't get so cold that it dies. I got some other tricks I use for that too. I'll show you in a second. Just hang on. Stay with me. So here's another spot where I planted some squash. This is at the base of a south where you are, south-facing slope, and you can see the darker earth here, and all along here I planted some squash. And the plan is to tie them on and train them up this fence. Right, there's a fence behind them about 4 feet high, so it's sort of a ready-made trellis. This whole garden had potatoes in it last year. And this year I'm going to do squash. The previous year I did beans, I believe. Beans and tomatoes. Anyway, this year it's going to be mostly squash. This is a pumpkin-like squash, but it's not jack-o'-lantern. It's a pumpkin that actually has a good flavor. So anyway, another trick you can do to get your soil temperature up, you just get two pieces of wood and you staple some plastic to them, and that way they roll up and you can put them away very easily and they'll last multiple years. But you just throw them over the soil that you want to superheat. Right, I'm going to spot over here where I planted some more squash, so I'll put them there as well. Got one here. And one more over here. Alright, that's all you gotta do. I gotta take those off and water it actually. I forgot. I gotta water that first to get the soil nice and wet and warm. But anyway, you get the idea, you get the picture. I find these little plastic wood things, and I have to use pieces of wood like this, otherwise they'll blow all over the place. And even like this, they still blow all over the place. Everything in my garden is subject to high winds because we're coastal here, right near the Atlantic Ocean. So sometimes if I know there's a big storm coming, I'll put rocks over them. But if I leave these on, in about 5 to 6 days, 7 days, they should be poking up. The main thing with these is you can't leave them on, right? You leave them on for about a week, and then you take them off because you don't want the thing to poke through the ground and be touching that plastic where it's insanely hot. Not a good situation. Alright, anyway, just a quick video on some tips and tricks on getting your squash to germinate and having success that way, and how to make use of a gardening space. I guess I didn't answer the question, why are you growing tulips in your vegetable garden? If you're following my podcast and following maritimegardening.com and following this video, it's pretty obvious that I'm not that interested in ornamental gardening, flowers and so on, but you know, of course my front yard is ornamental because I got to keep the property value up of the home and that sort of thing. But the only reason I have tulips in my vegetable garden is that my wife really likes tulips and they won't grow anywhere else on my property. They'll just get eaten. And so this makes her a little bit happy, and you know what they say, happy wife, happy life, and all that stuff. So this is just something I do to appease her and keep her happy. But now the tulips are done, so it's time to turn this into something else. In a few weeks, once these really start to die, I'll clip them off. And in about a month or so, it'll be a squash garden. All right. So I hope this was interesting to you. I hope you enjoyed the content. Subscribe, like us on Facebook, check out our podcast, maritimegardening.com, and also check out my column in the Local Express, Growing Food with Greg. All right, until next time, get out there and get at it and have fun. It's June, it's go time. It's time to get that garden in. Thanks for watching. Bye.